Welcome and thank you all for standing by. At this time, I would like to remind parties that your lines are on a listen-only mode. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I will now turn the meeting over to Linda Ambrosisi. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon or good evening for those of you joining on the East Coast and the West Coast. Thank you for joining us for a webinar on Korea Free Trade Agreements. I am pleased to note that we have more than 50 people registered for this webinar today. I am Linda Ambrosisi, International Trade Specialist for the Marketing and Communications Office for the U.S. Commercial Service at the Department of Commerce. This webinar is being brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service, and I'd like to welcome all U.S. Commercial Service and Foreign Commercial Service participants joining us all across the USA to learn about Korea and the Korea Free Trade Agreement. In a moment, I'll turn the presentation over to John Fogarasi, Minister Counselor of the U.S. Commercial Service in Korea, and Stan Phillips, Director, Agricultural Trade Office of the American Embassy in Seoul, Korea. All speakers will be available at the end of the presentation to answer your specific questions. Contact information will also be provided at the end of the webinar. Now, for those of you who just joined, you can still log on to the webinar by entering the URL website and passcode per the instructions that were sent to you by email. We do have a few housekeeping details to make sure everyone gets the most benefit from this afternoon's webinar. You will be able to hear the presentation via your telephone and view it simultaneously via your computer. If you are not hooked up through both, please take a moment to do this. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please press *0 anytime during the presentation. Now, because of the large number of participants online, we now have more than 25. It is not logistically feasible to take voice questions. However, we do invite you to type in questions on your screen as they occur to you during the presentation. As you can see on the right-hand side, there is a box at the bottom of the screen where you can click and type in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will compile the questions and present as many as time allows after the webinar, after the presentation. Typed questions which are not answered during the webinar due to time constraints will receive personal answers via email after the webinar. In addition, all listeners can be provided with information for any individual follow-up counseling or export assistance they need to pursue opportunities in this market. For those of you who just joined us and logged in, you can still join in our internet conference. Now I'd like to introduce live online from the Embassy of the United States, Korea, John Fogarasi, Minister Counselor for Commercial Affairs of the Embassy of the United States. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you to all the participants on this program. And good afternoon and good evening, as the case may be, here in Korea. And I trust you're all seeing a slide that shows an evening scene, and in fact still a little bit on the dark side here in Korea. It is right now 7 in the morning, and we're calling from a crisp first snow morning here in Seoul, and we are here ready with my staff to provide general information regarding Korea, provide an introduction, and hopefully interest companies to participate in a number of our commercial service programs. Let me first off just provide a general overview. I'm going to go to the next screen here. There we go, South Korea today. South Korea is a sophisticated, high-tech, dynamic country, is in fact the world's 13th largest economy. It has a global trade that has really surpassed over $700 billion and is booming ahead. It is very much a trading oriented country that has strong relationships with the U.S. going back a number of decades. It has particular strengths in the logistics and IT sectors. One fact that I think is of particular interest to your listeners is the 86% of Korean households have access to the internet. In fact, that level makes it one of the most wired countries in the world. Korea has developed very strong strengths in the IT area. You're probably familiar with companies such as Samsung and Hyundai and LG. And these are familiar to U.S. consumers, the cellular phones or the flat screen monitors. And this is really only the visible tip of the Korean tech iceberg. I encourage all of the listeners here, when they have an opportunity to come to Korea and experience this sophistication here, that you will immediately experience as you step off from the airplane into one of the most, let's say, easy to traverse airports in the world. Let me move on to the next scene. These are scenes from the modern economy that I was referring to. Upper left-hand corner is a World Cup soccer that Korea hosted here a few years back, 2002. Korea, in fact, has a number of other world-class events that it will be hosting, the Asian Games, as well as Korea recently won the site for a World Expo. In the center, you see high-speed train in Korea. That is very similar to the Japanese bullet train. It's called the KTX, and it runs right through the heart of the country from the capital, Seoul, right down to Busan in the south. And the final picture in the lower right-hand corner is Seoul at night. It's a little bit stylized, I have to say. It's a time-lapse photograph showing traffic moving through Seoul. Well, it is a special time-lapse photograph because traffic, unfortunately, in a city of 14 million doesn't quite move as smoothly as one would like. And that's a long time-lapse to show traffic moving as quickly as that picture would depict. Let me move on to the next screen here. Just a little background on Korea. The term miracle certainly applies. Korea 40 years ago had a GNP per capita something equivalent to Nigeria, $100 per capita. And today it is exceeding $20,000. That is a steep development curve that Korea has gone through. That obviously has been the huge attraction for so many American companies and entrepreneurs. At the same time, of course, such rapid development has had its own social impact when you have changes of such rapid dimensions. And so Korea has had to deal in both a social and political sense. But Korea today is as I initially stated, sophisticated economy, a stable political setting, and a home to many U.S. companies, the Fortune 500 companies. It's something that I'll go into in some depth here in a moment or two. In terms of the growth today, it is 4+. In fact, the latest indications are that it will be 5+ in terms of economic growth for the Korean economy. And the trade side, the growth in trade is also booming. It has extremely strong trade relationships, both with its neighbors as well as around the globe, but of course especially taking advantage of the relationship with China and Japan. And then moving down to trends, let me just move over to the next frame, please. Oh yeah, trends, thank you. We're going back and forth. I'll start off with U.S. trade. Expect strong investment outside Korea. In other words, the Koreans are very bold in terms of their activity, and I'm sure that the listeners here recognize the penetration that Korea has made in the U.S. namely with the visible products, name recognizable products, Hyundai, Kia, Samsung, LG, etc. Okay, let's move on to the next frame here. Let me kind of bore in a little bit on what the relationship now is with the U.S. And it is very impressive. The relationship with the U.S. Is significant in terms of even the numbers. The seventh largest export market. That's larger than France, Holland, or Brazil. And the most recent figures we have is $32.5 billion in terms of U.S. exports. And as the slide notes, it's up 17% from the previous year. It is moving ahead at about that clip for 2007. Let me also mention a few other points regarding just for comparison's sake, this is now comparing Korea-U.S. with respect to U.S. relationships around the world. And the Korean market here for the U.S., it's the sixth largest high-tech market and the fifth largest agricultural market. My colleague here will be talking about the agricultural components here in a moment or two. And then at the bottom is the United States is Korea's second largest, meaning that it's the two-way relationship. From Korea's perspective, the U.S. is one of the most important trading relationships it has within its economy. Next slide, please. Now, taking this one step further, looking at the kind of trade that is going on between the U.S. and Korea, a very interesting fact is that 40% of all of the non-agricultural products that are exported to Korea can be categorized as advanced technology products. This is a definition that comes from the Department of Commerce, and they have ranked these products. And so 40% of all of our trade is of a very sophisticated nature. And what that means is that with the strengths that the U.S. has in such areas as electronics and in advanced manufacturing and in materials, that Korea is a market that's able to absorb as well as add to in terms of joint ventures and in terms of developing further R&D. And we'll talk about that in a minute about R&D here in Korea. And just to conclude on this slide, U.S. exports of ATP, advanced technology products, are up 24% in 2006. Next slide, please. This slide may be a little bit difficult to see for some folks, but this is really meant to say one basic thing. The top 10 exports to Korea are in a very diversified area. They go everything from energy to aircraft to optical equipment, chemicals, plastics, and then, of course, in the transportation sector. The point here to remember is that our trade is very diversified, and it covers the entire spectrum of U.S. products and services. Next slide, please. I mentioned investments in U.S. investments in Korea. This, I think, is another strong indicator of the faith and credibility that Korea has. As I mentioned earlier, most of the Fortune 500 companies have presence here, significant presence. And just as an indication here, Citigroup has a recent acquisition of a few years ago here, $2.7 billion, in buying a major stake here in the financial network here in Korea. And this is a branch banking operation, not just a merchant banking. General Motors has a major production here. It's the platform for General Motors for much of their marketing back into China. They produce the GM Daewoo vehicle here, and it's then sold on to China in kit form. And that supplements also some plants that GM has that are currently underway producing vehicles within China. Gale Corporation Yale Corporation, you see a lovely picture of Songdo, there we go, Songdo New City Project. Um, this is a planned city that is near the Incheon Airport. In fact, Incheon Airport is a good 55 kilometers outside of Seoul. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, when you arrive here in Korea, you're pleasantly greeted because the airport is a very friendly, consumer-friendly place. They have devised and planned a major mixed use, meaning residential and commercial city that is today the largest such development, real estate development, private real estate development in the world. It's $25 billion. And this is done in cooperation with United Technologies and POSCO, who is the largest steelmaker in Korea. And they also, by the way, Koreans love golf, and so one of the big drawing points here has been to develop a Jack Nicklaus championship golf course. Next slide, please. Recently, Kimberly-Clark established an R&D center here. The reason that I felt that this was important to mention is because Kimberly-Clark, with global operations, still only has major R&D facilities in the U.S., with the exception of Korea. And of course, I raised the question with the Kimberly-Clark folks as to what was the motivation for setting up here in Korea. And I thought that the president and CEO, Tom Falk's answer captured, I think, what is one of the key values here for Korea. Now let me read this. That Korea has world-class scientific talent and infrastructure. It also has sophisticated consumers who can give us new product insights. Korea is also a culture that bridges the best of the East with an understanding of the West. This creates a highly favorable climate for innovation. I felt that really hit so many of the aspects that are of attraction for U.S. exporters. The sophistication of scientific talent, the sophisticated consumers here, and then also an understanding of how business should be done between East and West. And let me just make one more point on this. Korea sends more students to the United States than any other country in the world. And what that has resulted in is setting the mindset here in Korea for how to deal with American business, how to deal with American customers, etc. So often when I go in and I visit Korean companies, their CEO or their board have graduates from Stanford, from University of Texas, from Michigan, etc. And it's an immediate connection, and moreover, the important part is they understand how to do business well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Let me just then bring it right down to the kind of hardcore of what will make it successful, what exporters can expect, and what the formulas for success are. Well, first off, U.S. products here come in with a big plus. They're recognized for quality, price, and innovation. We just, in fact, tomorrow will be the opening of Toys R Us. This is their first outlet here in Korea, and Toys R Us, of course, has a great reputation within the U.S., and there are throngs of people who have gone to the U.S. They go on travel shopping tours and have been seeking something such as Toys R Us here in Korea, and of course the folks, the management there has seen that opportunity and is opening up their first outlet here. There is upscale affluence here. Vehicles that are driven on the road are large sedan-type, limousine-type vehicles, literally, unlike what I had imagined the street scenes would be before I came to Korea. And that just, again, is another indicator of a fair bit of disposable income in this country. The third point, diminishing resistance to imported goods. That is very, very important. Korea has had a negative reputation in the past of inward-looking, xenophobic, um, essentially a hermit-type kingdom where they were playing the world markets on exports, their exports, but were very resistant to imports. That has completely changed. You have very broad-scale, upscale viewpoints on name brands coming in from the U.S., as I said, and of course, as you walk down the shopping malls, it would be as if you were in any major capital in the world. You have a craving, in fact, for foreign products here in Korea. Then a question of the basic pocketbook. The Korean currency here has appreciated over the last, I'd say, about 18 months, at least 8-9%, and that makes the, in turn, the U.S. dollar 8-9% more attractive. The second from the last point, marketing channels, SMEs. Korea in the past has had a reputation of being run by the majors, the conglomerates. That has changed. The conglomerates clearly still have a lot of influence, but by virtue of an entrepreneurial push here, SMEs, small, medium-sized entrepreneurs, are prevalent, and in fact are great matches for small U.S. companies who want to set up here. And also the SMEs have their own contacts to the majors, so that is a channel or conduit to get to the major companies. And last but certainly not least, the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, wherein we anticipate a major leap in our trading relationship, both in terms of the intensity, broadening it, and of course making U.S. products all the more attractive here in Korea. And I'll be talking about that in a moment. Now let's turn to some of the challenges that U.S. products have here. Koreans are survivors. They have developed their economy here between two roaring neighbors, one being Japan, the other one China. And as a result, they have developed their own style of doing business, which is, namely, a hard bargain. And so American exporters should be prepared for some intensive discussions, negotiations, and moreover, at times, even after the deal has been concluded, Koreans will continue to seek concessions. Korea is a regulated environment for doing business. The Free Trade Agreement has addressed a number of the regulatory issues that we found to be inconsistent with international standards. But like most sophisticated economies, regulations must be abided by when it comes to either telecommunications or even the ingredients that go into face creams. So all these need obvious, very close attention from the U.S. client. Intellectual property rights are honored here. However, may I go back again? Thank you. Anyway, protecting the intellectual property rights is a key component, namely because the Korean legal framework here is different from the American protections for intellectual property rights. It doesn't mean that it's any less, but it has a system where it's the first to file. So I strongly encourage, in fact on our website we have a special toolkit for intellectual property rights, which essentially says you're interested in doing business here, start right from square one, get those intellectual property rights secured here in Korea. The next point is to cultivate business relationships. This is nothing new for any exporter, I'm sure, but obviously it is a key point. It's not a bad idea to do a little bit of homework with respect to the Korean customs. A word or two in Korean goes a long way. And then the last 2 points here quickly. Obviously the Koreans have their own way of packaging things, and so a sympathetic ear, as opposed to this is the way we do it in the U.S., will also help add to that formula for success here in Korea. All right, let's go to the next slide. I had mentioned earlier the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, and Secretary Gutierrez was here last December. His statement, I think, really is the definitive statement here of the importance of this agreement. The most significant trade agreement for us in 15 years. It covers every single aspect of our trading relationship, and it is considered by the folks, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and others, well familiar, including an independent study by the International Trade Commission, to be really the gold standard for a free trade agreement. And when I referred earlier to Koreans driving a hard bargain, the fact that this took over a year to negotiate and it was a day-night affair, I think speaks for itself. This was a very, very tough agreement to reach, and namely because the U.S. market is relatively free, and the Korean market, as I mentioned earlier, has this heritage of being walled off and closed off. Well, I think we could all be very proud of this agreement, as it had broken virtually all the walls down, and now we're on equal footing here. Next slide, please. And just quickly, what does the KORUS, and by the way, KORUS means Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. What does that mean? It will reduce tariffs for thousands of U.S. products. Many of our products, on average, are about 8%, and those will go down to 0. There may be some, depending upon the particular product itself, it will have a phase-out of anywhere from immediate to 2-year, and there are obviously some other products that are exceptions that will have longer phase-out periods. The result, 25-50% increase in U.S. exports. That's a stunning figure. There's no real time frame to that, but my best estimate on that would be that I can see us moving from the $32.5 billion and increasing that another $16 billion over the next 3 to 4 years. In addition to the tariff reductions, it has made doing business in Korea much easier, clarifying regulatory frameworks, pushing the Koreans to international standards, and also ensuring stronger transparency in all of the relationships, all of the trading relationships that we have. Now, and the next slide says, building on a strong relationship, because we indeed do have a very strong relationship, and the reason that we feel very optimistic about the impact of the FTA is because it brings together everything I had been saying earlier, meaning this is a very sophisticated market, and in essence we are drawing two ideal trading partners together. And even the statistics will show that there's no two trading partners in the entire OECD listing of countries that are as close to each other in R&D spending as between Korea and the U.S. And as I mentioned also, there's a strong flow of education going between the U.S. and Korea. So again, we are in sync with each other, and in essence, I think we can bring out the best in each other. Next slide, please. Just to touch on the point regarding Korea being for major players. Yes, Korea has a reputation for the big players. Korean Air is the world's largest freight carrier. Hanjin is one of the world's largest shipping companies. Yes, it would be great, and our job is to help American companies get the foot in the door with the big guys. But at the same time, we want to see all levels, all scales penetrated here, because we feel that there's a diversification here that can be taken advantage of here in the Korean market. So the answer to that is SMEs are important here, and we're looking forward to helping U.S. SMEs deal with the Korean SMEs equally. Next slide, please. I'm just going to skip through these very quickly. These are just some highlight points. The market size for defense-related products, close to $5 billion and growing significantly. It is one of the most significant defense markets for the United States in the world. On aerospace, the major players obviously are here with Boeing And in fact, Boeing has major sales here imminent to a number of the major players here, very strong in the market. But at the same time, let me mention that having recently participated in the Seoul Air Show, there was the entire scale of American aerospace products, right down to basic instrumentation packages from small and medium-sized companies. Next slide, please. Healthcare and beauty. Interesting fact that somebody did an analysis, and I believe it. Koreans spend per capita more on upscale cosmetic products than any other country in the world. And that also brings together a number of things that I mentioned earlier, which is the disposable income, their interest in name products, boutique items, etc. And I'm mentioning this here as an indicator of, in general, of consumer products. Next slide, please. IT, this goes without saying, huge markets, and we've got growth here in range of 8 to 10%. U.S. is a significant player here on the market with wireless and next generation products. RFID, by the way, is a very strong component here and is an area where Koreans and the U.S. together work closely. And the next slide is information and communication. Thank you. Okay, tourism and education. 10 million travelers come back and forth between the U.S. and Korea, and it is a hot market with very good connections now. There's direct connections by the major American airlines here, Northwest, and Continental, and United, and Delta all have routes coming in here, and then Korean Air, of course, has direct flights to many of the major U.S. cities. On education, also something I'd mentioned earlier, the strength here of the relationship. Parents encourage their children. This is their ideal to attend an American. It could be an American high school or it could be American college, but there's significant relationships going on here between our two countries when it comes to education. Okay, and let's see. I think we're coming to conclusion here. I had mentioned IPR2. It's worth repeating. There is our website, and I encourage those who have any questions about intellectual property rights to look at that website. Let me now quickly turn it over to Stan Phillips, Director of the Agricultural Trade Office here, a colleague who will talk to you about the agricultural side of the prospects here. Stan?
Thank you, John, and thanks to the Commerce Department for including USDA in this webinar this morning. It's a real pleasure to join you. I'd just like to take a few moments to go over a couple of resources that are available for U.S. food and agriculture exporters to take advantage of the Korean market. The slide that you see before you right now is an overview of the Foreign Agricultural Service website, and you can see the address of that website is www.fas.usda.gov, and there's a wealth of information on our website about the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement. You can find out how the agreement benefits individual commodities. You can also find out how the agreement benefits each state. I think we have almost 48 fact sheets for most of the states now up on our website, and I would encourage you to take a look at those because I think you will find that it covers almost any product that you are interested in and how it will be treated under the Korean-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. With that, I'd like to encourage you also to take a look at our Attache Reports, which you'll find lower down the screen on the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service website. Under Attache Reports, you will see reports from around the world from our offices and agriculture trade offices. The one that I'd like to point out to you in particular is our Exporter Guide. That Exporter Guide is one of many reports, but it really encapsulates many of the key points for entering the market in Korea with a food or agricultural product. If we could move to the next slide there. This is the slide that shows the various commodity fact sheets and state fact sheets that are available on the FAS website. As you can see, there's quite a wide variety there. And you can drill down into the state fact sheets, and I think you'll find that there's quite a rigorous review of the various benefits that the FTA will provide on a state-by-state basis. Next slide, please. And this is our Attache Reports section. As you can see there, we've highlighted the Exporter Guide for the Republic of Korea. As I said, there's many other reports as well that you might find of interest. Our Affairs Report, or Food and Agriculture Import Regulations and Standards, is also a good report to take a look at to see the types of certifications and labeling regulations, etc., that the Korean Food and Drug Administration and the Korean Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry have in place and are in place to regulate the imported food that comes into Korea. In addition to these reports that are available on the FAS website, there are several other resources that are available to U.S. food and agriculture exporters. State and regional trade groups are out there to assist you. I think most food and agriculture exporters are aware of those groups. There's also many trade associations who represent particular commodities, and we have nearly 30 trade associations that have some kind of activity in Korea. Many of those, almost 15, have local representatives who are working to develop the markets for particular commodities. Then a couple other things that we have found are very good tools for entering the market are trade shows here in Korea. The one in particular that that exporters find to be very useful is the Seoul Food and Hotel Show, which will be held May 14th through 18th in 2008. It's the largest food-related trade show in Korea, and it's endorsed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The Agriculture Trade Office here in Seoul will be organizing a U.S. pavilion at that event, and we would encourage you to contact us if you're interested in participating. We would be able to help you with the arrangements to come to the show and assist you in making contacts with Korean importers while you're here. We also have several other trade shows that are focused at particular commodities like wine and spirits. The seafood industry had their trade show in November, and the U.S. Agriculture Trade Office here at the Embassy had a pavilion at both of those shows, and we would encourage you to consider making use of those shows to enter the market. Let's see, I think that's like next slide. This is our Agriculture Exporter Guide, and this is really a overarching report that covers many of the points that if we had an hour I would get into, but I would encourage you to take a look at this report. It has a detailed market overview of the Korean agriculture and food market, which, as John mentioned earlier, is the 5th largest market for U.S. agriculture products and a growing market. The Agriculture Exporter Guide has a section on exporter business tips, which gives some details about standards and regulations, tariffs, not only the current tariffs, but also the tariffs that will exist after implementation of the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. And it also has a section on market sector structure and trends, which gives some detail on food and non-food retail markets in Korea, which may also be of interest to non-agriculture product exporters if you're targeting the retail market in Korea. The report also covers franchising, family restaurant chains, coffee shop chains, and a variety of different retail markets that may be of interest to U.S. exporters. So with that, I think we'll just conclude by saying that as the 5th largest market for U.S. agriculture products and a market that's sure to grow after the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement is implemented, I would encourage all of you who are interested in exporting agriculture products and food products to consider the market. And if you have any questions, please contact the Agriculture Trade Office here in Seoul, and we'd be happy to try to assist you in entering the market here in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan, and thank you, John, for your presentation. Now we'll have a sampling of more than 8 questions submitted by our participants. For those of you whose questions we aren't able to get to during this presentation, if you left your email address when you registered, you can expect a reply via email from one of our offices shortly. I guess the first question is from James Van Hughes. The question is, when will the tariff decreases go into effect?
Good question. Let me just back up a little bit and mention how these FTAs are, what the process is. And first, one goes through a period of negotiations that is between the Korean government and the U.S. government, in this case the United States Trade Representative's Office. And because of the special instance with Fast Track, there was a clear deadline, which was of big benefit to the negotiators. They really had to conclude the negotiations or miss the window of opportunity. That was done at the last summer. That was concluded. The next phase is to get ratification from both of the legislatures, the U.S. Congress in our case, and the National Assembly. So that process is still underway. Both countries are going through political elections right now and campaigning, and so I think they're looking for the appropriate window when folks can focus on these issues. We hope to have the FTA addressed by the U.S. Congress here in early spring, and the National Assembly here in Korea to shortly after the beginning of the year take up that question, that proposal, and hopefully by the middle of this spring here, we should be in a position here with both legislators ratifying. At that point, is the many of the tariff reductions and decreases, as the question was, would go into effect immediately. There are some with delays, of course, and it just depends on a case-by-case basis, but the vast majority would go into effect immediately.
Thank you very much, John. The next question is from Judith Nelson. She would like to know, what kind of advantage does a locally made product hold? For example, our special purpose machine has a Korean-made version. Is there likely to be an automatic edge in tenders and local government purchases for locally manufactured products?
That's another very good question. Locally manufactured products, meaning their product that is designed for the Korean market, and in this instance, if I understood it correctly, manufactured here in Korea. Did I understand that question correctly?
Yeah, meaning that if they have an advantage of a locally made product, and for example, the special purpose machine has a Korean-made version, is there an edge in tenders and local government?
Oh, I see.
For
Yes.
locally
Yes.
manufactured.
There are local procurement regulations, and in certain sectors there is an edge for local products, as there are in the instance in the U.S. where states reserve the right to have, let's say, incentives for or benefits for locally produced products. There are so many international tenders that Koreans seek where the American product is on the same playing field, level playing field, as the Korean product. And that would be, let's say, the vast majority of cases. There are, of course, as I mentioned earlier, particular instances of exceptions, and we'd be happy to look into that for the inquirer.
Great, thank you very much, John. Lynn Wang has a question. She would like to know, how will the free trade agreement affect the education and travel industry?
Sure, that's another good question. It doesn't affect it directly. While services obviously are going to be the relationship on services in the broad scale are made more transparent. Doing business and services is made much easier. What we see the benefits is in two ways. One, a stronger overall relationship with Korea, meaning a halo effect, that as the relationships on the trade side intensify, that means greater interaction and interplay between Korea and the U.S., and all the more interest in American educational institutions. Secondly, another benefit is the kind of a positive trend here between the U.S. and Korea. Korea is now eligible for what's called the Visa Waiver Program. So this will mean a much easier ability of Koreans to visit the United States, travel and tourism, and again, that will have spin-off effects to assisting the greater interest of families and students to come to U.S. educational institutions.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Michael Wagner. He would like to know, how does healthcare spending in Korea compare to that of the United States?
Great question. I'm going to call upon my colleagues in the healthcare sector here to respond to that question. I'll just repeat it for them here. Okay. Mr. Eric Hunt will be on the line here, and commercial attaché. And the question was, how does Korean healthcare spending compare in terms of other countries here?
Good afternoon. I would like to say that the healthcare sector is one of the largest economic sectors here in Korea. And depending on the exchange rate, you're looking at a national healthcare insurance budget of between 28 and 30 billion US dollars. And roughly speaking, about 5% would be towards medical devices. You're looking at a market size of about 2.6 billion. You're looking at about $8.5 billion expenditures in pharmaceuticals. As it is public health, there is significant issues related to having every product, both medical device and pharmaceutical, registered within a pricing register. Everything is controlled on those price lists. And of course, as in most countries, all medical device and pharmaceutical companies must have local representation to deal with Korean Food and Drug Administration regulatory issues, the insurance, and also the registration of the product and the pricing. Those markets are improving, and there's going to be changes brought on by the Free Trade Agreement that will be streamlining things like distribution channels, making it easier and less problematic for companies to deal through the multiple layers of distribution that you have in a public health system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. My next
Go
question.
ahead.
Thank you. The next question I have is from Sean Hazlitt. He he would like to know, do we have any information, or do you have any information regarding clinical trials in Korea?
Clinical trials in Korea. That's the next question, and perhaps I'll hand it right back to Eric here. So the question was, what do we know about clinical trials?
The Republic of Korea for a number of years has primarily been working on what we call generic pharmaceutical products. And most of those products are approved on a bioequivalency basis, documentary and laboratory tests. So very limited clinical trials are conducted in the area of pharmaceuticals and medical devices in Korea because the market is not necessarily an innovative market, it's a generics market. The free trade agreement and other economic factors are forcing the Republic of Korea to move towards a more innovative approach. And we understand, just like Kimberly-Clark, there are other pharmaceutical companies from the United States on the innovative side that will be coming to Korea with respect to conducting clinical trials on pharmaceutical launches for products here in the Republic of Korea. So the market for clinical trials, though in its infancy, is going to expand probably within the next year or two, primarily as a result of economic factors and the free trade agreement. So sit tight, and the companies who are developing the clinical trials or the people who are supplying the products to generate the information on the clinical trials, that market is going to be increasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And that was Eric Hunt, who's the commercial attaché for the U.S. Commercial Service Embassy of the United States of Korea. The next question I have here, and we still can take questions, we still have some time, is from James Van Huys. He asks, when will the tariff decreases go into effect, and is there a document that identifies the harmonized codes that are affected? I think we already answered the first part of the question. The second part, is there a document that identifies the harmonized codes that are affected? What is that document?
Right. There is a book, or let's say the grail on this in terms of what is affected. We're happy to do a little bit of research on gentlemen's behalf, and also we can add in there a few more things about what we think the prospects are for that particular product. So we'd be delighted to look into that for him, and we just need to find what the particular product category is, and then we'll take it from there.
Great. Thank you very much. Arnie Ash has a question. When is it expected that the free trade agreement will become effective?
Right. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, we're talking about a legislative calendar, and we are hoping our anticipated date here would be sometime in the early to mid-spring. And so that puts us at the March, April time frame. But at the same time, these things are rather unpredictable, so we can't be certain. But we are aiming for that kind of time frame.
Great, thank you, John. And just to answer some of your questions about PowerPoint presentation slides from this webinar, yes, we will have these available, as well as the taping of this webinar, as well as a transcript. And that will also be given to you. That information and where you can find this information will also be given to you at the end of our Q&A session. We still have a couple more questions, and I'd like to finish out the remaining questions for the webinar presentation. This question is from Steve Dew. He would like to know, how does the free trade agreement treat textiles, and do you anticipate any reduction in tariff rates in the USA on Korean fabrics?
Okay, let me hand that one over to Mr. Eric Olson. This does, of course, textiles has always been a very sensitive area, and there are, as I recall, the chapters on textiles to be fairly extensive. So I think Mr. Olson here will give you a general answer, and then we can just get into specifics on a one-on-one basis with the caller. But here's Eric.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as John mentioned, textiles are definitely a chapter in the FTA, and there are the FTA will be impacting the types of quotas and tariffs that face textile products. So what would be helpful for us with the individual questioner, if they could send us some further information on what type of textiles they're referring to, because the different rate changes depend on what you would be exporting to Korea. So if we get some further information from you, we will be happy to look into those changes and get a definitive answer back to you.
Great, thank you very much. That was Eric Olson, who's also commercial attaché for the U.S. Embassy in Seoul, Korea. Okay, we'll go on with the next question from, looks like, Virginia Berry. She would like to know, do you have any specific regulations on vitamins in South Korea, including label requirements?
Vitamins and labeling. Okay, we have one of our local specialists, Yunchil Che, coming on the line right now, who will provide an answer to that. The question was, vitamins and any special labeling requirements.
Vitamin falls under health functional food sector here in Korea. So it is regulated under a health functional food code, Food Act. The labeling requirement is there are several labeling requirements, but the first, the major one is it is described, inscripted in Korean. And I have a regulatory requirement for a health functional food, which includes the nutritional supplements in a document. So for more details, I can email you the whole the regulatory procedure. In Korea, import notification, which is a kind of a pre-market license, is required by a Korea Food and Drug Administration. We call it a KFDA. So I'm going to send you the whole the major requirement by a KFDA to obtain the import notification.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, thank you. Just two more questions I'd like to ask before we end. This is from Paul Katsby. He would like to know, is there a health product specialist who can help us find a Korean distributor for orthopedic soft goods and splints?
Orthopedic, could you repeat that last part again, please?
Sure. Orthopedic soft goods and splints. How can someone find a health product specialist or a specialist?
Well, in fact, Yunchil was the person. She's really the individual who's right up on top of the market. She, in fact, has been working globally here, and she has just returned from Medica, the world's largest medical show, and working on behalf of U.S. companies, linking them together with Korean companies. So she'll go anywhere in the world. Let me put Yunchil back on the line, and here the question is, can you help a client find an agent and distributor in orthopedic products and splints?
The orthopedic products like implants are mostly imported 100%. But the accessories like sprints, yes, there I need to check which one is specializing in splints, because each distributor which deal with the medical devices in Korea has their own specific specialized product items. So yes, we can help through our fee-based program to locate the distributor candidates for orthopedic splints.
Great. Thank you very much.
And let me mention that we, of course, have our program of Gold Keys, which has worked very effectively for American exporters to find agents and distributors. And her value here is exactly in her network with agents and distributors who can handle those products here in Korea, either regionally or across the country.
Great, thank you very much. And this is our last question for today's webinar. This is from David Drinks. He would like to know, what is the trend for energy drinks, and what are the tariffs for nutritional supplements and healthy drinks?
What? Okay, that was a transfer. Run that one by me again.
Yeah, what is the trend for energy?
Oh, trend. I'm sorry.
And
for energy drinks.
What
and
what are the tariffs for
nutritional supplements? Well, let me just introduce that first by saying that Koreans are very health conscious. They love to go to the stores and find the products that are going to enable them to live a long and healthy life. This is the country that is the originator of ginseng. So, I mean, you've got that as a tremendous heritage and background. They love nutritional food. So, let me hand it over to Yunchil again, who also covers that territory, and she can add a few more words.
Well, as John mentioned, Korea is very health conscious country, so there are a lot of health food drinks. But energy drinks, in order to get the import notification, Korean FDA requires the ingredient list first. So before we check the ingredient list, I'm not so I cannot say if that product fall under just food or under nutritional supplements. Sometimes Korean actually if the energy drink contains some does not contain the list that the KFDA does not allow, it cannot be imported. But with the ingredient list, we can tell whether it can be imported or not, because KFDA check the ingredient list very strictly.
By the way, KFDA is the Korean Food and Drug Administration, and they have their list of prescribed products that or ingredients that they have to review. And so Yunchil was mentioning that the ingredients are one key component in terms of marketing channels, as well as reviewing it for any regulatory controls that the Koreans may have.
Great. Thank you, you two, and thank you, John. Everyone, I'm afraid that is all the time we have. Remember, for those of you whose questions we didn't answer, you can expect a reply via email from one of our speakers. Also, for questions that occur to you after this webinar, please do make a note of the contact information on your screen. You can contact any one of the speakers at any time, so please take a moment to write down their contact information. Also, please do check out our website at www.export.gov for more information on upcoming webinars and more information on other country markets and topics. Also, if you'd like to see the archive version of this webinar, you can go into www.export.gov and go into the link on the right-hand side that says View Webinars. Once again, that link will be View Webinars for not only the archive version of this webinar, but PowerPoint presentation slides and a transcript. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this webinar. And please.
And may I also add our thanks from our office here for everyone participating in this, and TGIF.
Well, thank you very much. And please check your email boxes for more information on upcoming webinars. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.